Welcome back to She Asked Tools for Practical Hope. I'm your host, Anna McBride, and I am so excited that you're here. Around here, we don't believe midlife is a slow fade. We believe it's a decision point. You either drift or you train. You either manage symptoms or you build strength. Today's guest embodies that decision. In her mid 40s, while running a business and raising a family, Terry lost over 80 pounds. But what interests me more than the weight loss is the identity shift that made it all possible. Because bodies don't transform without standards changing first. Today, we're talking about midlife burnout, perimenopause, hormones, self sabotage, and what it actually takes to build strength in the second half of your life. Terry Tateossian, thank you so much for joining me. I'm so glad you're here.
Thank you, Anna, for having me. It's my absolute pleasure and honor to be here.
Oh, great. On this podcast, we like to begin with a story. So, Terry, take us back to the season before the transformation. What was happening in your body, your energy, your daily life? And did you know something was off or did it build slowly over time? Just share your story.
Such a great question. So I grew up in Eastern Europe. I came to the United States at the age of 13. And everything from that point forward in my life throughout college or throughout post college was all about working, providing, climbing the corporate ladder. And I was often told, don't be too ambitious, but be so ambitious enough at the same time that you can still have a family, but don't be too ambitious about that. You can't have it all. And so I was set out to prove everything wrong. Yeah, I can have a family and I can have a successful corporate career, which then ended up transitioning into an entrepreneurship. By the time I was 35, I had 5 independent businesses that I started and I founded and rolled over. And yeah, it was busy. It was busy. And I had my daughter at 30. She was 10 pounds, 2 ounces at birth. And I was diagnosed with gestational diabetes later on in the pregnancy. And then I had my son at 35. This time I was aware that I had gestational diabetes. So I avoided a lot of the things that I ate in my first pregnancy, but I still gained a lot of weight. He ended up being 8 pounds. And the weight never came off. And so here I was, 37 years old, still wearing maternity clothes. And almost 3 years later, I was still in maternity clothes because I was pretty close to my pregnancy weight still. And so I would yo yo up and down between 210 and 190, 180, right back to 210. And I'll never forget, I kept saying it out loud for at least a year before the ER incidents happened, that I just felt like something was wrong with me and I didn't know what that was. So I kept saying it to my family. Something's really wrong with me. I can't explain what. I just felt really off, really lightheaded, weak feeling, especially in mid-afternoon. Just a general kind of fogginess was taking place. I had no appetite for anything other than sugar and alcohol. And that's just the way I was coping. And so one day I was reaching for my nightly pint of 2,000 calories ice cream, and I started having chest pains out of nowhere, really severe, sharp chest pains. And I thought, oh my gosh, I'm having a heart attack. Run to ER. They held me there overnight, gave me a Xanax, and said, you had a panic attack. Go home and think about your life, basically. And of course, I had employees, I had a family, I had people relying on me. And so I was so embarrassed, so ashamed. Oh my gosh, I had a panic attack. That's so embarrassing, right? I can't tell people I was in ER for 2 days for a panic attack. They're going to think I'm crazy, right? They're going to say, oh, she's lost her mind. She's a Looney Tune. And so I didn't do anything about it. I just kept going in the same pattern that I was at, the same trajectory, figuring out it's a fluke, whatever, one time thing, weird. I glitched, right? I glitched. And so it happened again a couple months later, because that's how the body works. You don't hear it the first time, second time, third time. It's going to keep happening. And so it happened again. I was convinced they missed it the last time. There's no way this is happening to me again. This is insane, right? And so ran to ER, same thing happened. And now they recognize me. They're like, oh, hi, it's you again. Here's the Xanax, right? And this time I was lucky. One of the nurses said, you need to think about losing some weight. And so that kind of shook me up a little bit. And I started that journey of figuring out how the heck do I lose all this fat? And that's where Pandora's box was opened.
Mm. Wow, what a great story. It really speaks to an awareness, some healing, at least that you needed to heal, and then even some actions that you wanted to take, which is really speaks to resilience, I imagine, and a determination. So a few follow-up questions. At what point did you stop negotiating with yourself?
Oh my, I still do.
Meaning in
Every
terms
day.
of the excuses or the rationality for what was keeping you where you were.
It's ongoing. It
Mm.
literally never truly stops. They've just, the messages, right? The negotiations have just gotten fewer
Okay.
and not as loud, right? So my consistency muscle, my identity in this particular way of life has gotten stronger
Okay.
through a lot of repetition. So even though I still hear the negotiation, like, oh, you've worked really hard today, maybe you can just skip this thing here. And this thing here is lifting weights. Or maybe, oh, you had such an emotional day today, Terry. Why don't you have one or two spoons of Nutella? That's going to be such a nice little reward for you. So they
Right.
haven't gone away because they're still
Okay.
ruminating. I've just gotten stronger at recognizing them. Number one, I have the awareness that they're there, right? That's not really me wanting that. It's just an old pattern. It's an old program that's running back there.
Okay, that sounds familiar. And what did you demand of yourself that you hadn't demanded before? Is it to listen to yourself, pay attention to those messages, or something else?
Really, what it required was to go back and recognize the parts of
Mm.
myself that were unhealed, maybe
Okay.
sad,
Mm.
unseen, of them to the rug, right? Because who has time to
Wow.
deal with this nonsense, right? Just shove it under the rug. It's too embarrassing, right? Or it's too sad, or what's the point? That kind of
Yeah.
thing. And when we do that, when we stuff things in the closet, essentially, or under
Mhm.
the rug, or however you want to phrase it, they tend to get louder. They tend to get bigger, and
Yeah.
so I avoided having to deal with a lot of things. And so they took over. Essentially, they would
Right.
wait until I'm vulnerable, tired, cranky, in perimenopause, confused,
Mm.
and they would take over. Yes.
Yeah, I hear you. I certainly recognize that pattern from my own history. One last question here. Who did you need to become in order to lose the 80 pounds?
Who did I? That's a great question. I'm going to answer it differently though. Who did I
Okay.
need to unbecome? I had to unbecome this person that somehow was created out of necessity, out of lack of abundance, out of pain, right? And that really wasn't me. I didn't recognize that person. And so I had allowed these things or these events and these kind of environments to define how I was going to live my life when that wasn't me. That's not where I wanted to be. So I had to figure out how to strip that away, how to remove that, who I had become. It was just an outfit I was wearing, and I would look in the mirror and say, "Oh my gosh, who put that together?"
Yeah, yeah, that's
Mhm,
that's what I was describing earlier as drifting. We have a
mhm.
tendency when we're not really paying attention to when we lose ourselves in situations or times, I find, and particularly in midlife, right? Where we can
Yes.
get so caught up in the busyness of the day to day that we lose motivation. Because I do feel like midlife isn't about motivation, it's about standards. And we can lose sight of them because the standard that became more obvious to you as you were describing, looking in the mirror and noticing these details that didn't feel like the true you, that
Mhm.
requires, in my understanding, a different standard. And so I'm curious how the idea of in midlife, it's not about motivation, it's about standards resonates with you.
Yeah, absolutely. The standard of not falling victim to the narrative,
Mm,
right? The standard that not everything I believe is true, right? And finding standards out there in the wild, in the world, that speak to that narrative rather than the opposite. Because if you go to a doctor, you listen to the media, look around, right, you will
mhm,
see a standard nowadays that has been diminished in terms of,
mm,
let's say, a woman over 50, what the expectation for that is, and
right,
find proof, find evidence out there of people that are doing it differently, that have a different standard. Surround yourself with those types of people, whether it's on social media, email blasts, in person, go to events, go to conferences, go on retreats, go do things that give you a different perspective rather than what, you know, is on average out there. And your
yeah.
standard will change.
I love that. Yes, I do believe in that possibility, right? That we can up upgrade our standards to ones that we can find out in the wild, right? You don't have to stick with the way you've always done things. So I really love that perspective. So let's talk about midlife burnout, right? In your experience, when does burnout stop becoming circumstantial and start becoming a signal that something needs to change internally?
When does that become obvious? So many signs, right?
Yeah.
Let's see. So, when your sleep starts getting disrupted, so you're not sleeping well, you are staying up all night because you're stressed, right? Or you're working, in my case, or you have anxiety, you have a difficult time getting to bed. So, these are all signals. When you try to take a day off, you try to get a breather and you can't. You're addicted to that cortisol feeling of stress all the time. You have to be busy all the time, but you don't know why,
Right.
right? You have no idea how to be still, how to be quiet, how to take a day off, and how to just bring the stress down, right? That feels uncomfortable. All right, so that's a signal, and these are all, I'm speaking from experience. These are all kind of signals where I go, oh, something is rolling in the wrong direction. When another one is when you have no appetite,
Mm,
you can go all day without eating anything. You'll have a coffee at 2 p.m., you'll have another coffee at 3 p.m., and then you have a binge at night, right? You'll eat everything in sight when you get home. That's another sign. That is a sign your body is malnourished, your metabolism is not functioning right. If you're not waking up hungry, that's a sign, right? Just little things like that have been made okay by society. Like another one is, oh, I'm addicted to sugar. How many times have we heard that? I
Hmm.
have a sweet tooth. I'm a sugar addict. Imagine people ran around saying, I'm addicted to alcohol. Hi. Or I'm addicted to cocaine. Hi. But it's okay to be addicted to sugar and have that be
Right.
your main nutrient.
Yeah, making light of it is what you're
Yeah.
saying, suggesting,
Hmm.
yeah, there is a societal standard that certain things are more acceptable to be addicted to than others, as opposed to just looking at the addictive pattern as a signal that something is out of alignment, right?
Absolutely.
And yeah, and that's probably why it's difficult for people in their midlife when we've been entrained by societal information to notice those things because we're
Mhm.
moving at such a high, fast pace. You have to really slow down, don't you find, to listen to those signals?
Absolutely. Slow down, remove all kinds
Right.
of things from your life. So it's another question I get often is what can I do? What can I do? What can I
Mm,
add to my day? And my response is always not. It's
yeah.
not about adding things. It's what can we remove? Okay. That's where the
Okay.
problem is. Right.
Yeah.
And then to answer your last question is addiction, right? So if you're noticing yourself slipping into addiction, and addiction can be a lot of different things, right? Food,
Mhm.
sugar, alcohol, drugs, nicotine, behaviors, shopping, all kinds of things like that. When you start noticing that you are overcompensating and coping with your
Mhm.
state of being with external substances or external rewards that are negatively impacting your life in some way, it's time to reevaluate because continuing on that trajectory is not going to end up anywhere good.
You're right about that. Yes. So how of midlife depletion is hormonal, do you think? And how much of it is just living misaligned?
Well, from a non clinical, non doctor experience, my opinion from what I have observed is that it's 80% environment and
Okay.
20% hormonal. Now, when the hormonal shifts come in, and we have been living a life of overwhelm, overstress, overwork, overstimulation, and then you throw in the gasoline or you light the match, right, with the hormonal changes, I think that's when we see a lot of women experience things on a much higher, at a much higher degree of symptoms, right? So
Mm,
if you've been always on a diet, doing a lot of cardio, overworking, overstimulated, overwhelmed, you're drinking alcohol, you're doing all kinds of things that are not necessarily aligned with what is required for you to get through the perimenopausal transition. And when perimenopause comes in, ooh, baby.
yeah, it's the
That's
wake-up call.
yes, yes. And a lot of people go in the direction of it's my hormones. Because it's very hard to reevaluate your entire lifestyle up to that point from teenage, adolescence, puberty, all the way
Mm,
to
mhm.
perimenopause, right? But a lot of the symptoms can be alleviated or toned down through a lifestyle change. So that's why I say it's about 80/20.
Okay. Yeah, I tend to agree with that perspective, non-clinically speaking, of course. And for women who are overwhelmed by conflicting advice that they may be receiving, what foundational disciplines matter most?
Foundational disciplines. First of all, sleep. Getting enough sleep, enough good quality sleep, 8+ hours is essential. That would be my first place I would start looking. Substances, right? Because substances prevent us from getting good sleep and they affect our mood and a lot of other things. I would look at those two things first. What can you improve on in terms of sleep? What can you remove as far as substances? And then your nutrition. So are you eating enough food? A lot of us don't eat enough food,
Right.
shockingly, right? And we wonder like how the heck am I gaining weight? I'm not eating anything.
Yeah.
But what does that mean? Because you can have
Yeah.
2,000 calories worth of snacks and they could feel like nothing. Or you can have 2,000 calories worth of whole foods and balanced meals where you
Mhm.
can feel full, right? So you have to evaluate your nutrition not from a lack of perspective, like what can I get rid of? What can I add that's going to improve my quality of life? I'm going to get enough nutrients, enough vitamins, minerals, protein, the right types of carbs, less refined sugar, the right types of fats, getting a little bit more granular here, right? And
Mhm.
then what can I do for my muscle mass, for my bone density? How can I improve my body composition rather than looking at it as pure fat loss or losing weight or shifting and pivoting a little bit to how can I add more muscle to my frame that's going to speed up my metabolism, make me feel better every day, regulate my hormones, improve my mood. I'm just going to feel better overall so I can do all the other things. And that would be strength training. So, strength training with progressive overload. What that means is you start where you're at. And if that means you're going to start with body weight, great. You start with body weight and progressively over the course of months and years, and in my case, decades, you add a little bit more weight to your resistance, right?
I agree with that perspective. It's very powerful about understanding better what we can add and what we need to take away. Now, you speak about self-sabotage. And in midlife, how does self-sabotage show up differently than it did in our 20s and 30s?
Yeah, so many different ways. And this is a funny story because when I realized my main reason for failing all of the different diets that I tried until I found the method that worked for me was I was sabotaging with emotional eating. So I would do
Mhm.
really well for months and months. I would be on point, dialed in, all the things. And then out of nowhere, something would trigger me. And at first, I didn't know that there was a pattern, but something would happen. And then I would go into an emotional eating flare up that
Okay.
could last anywhere from a day to a month. And so I had no idea my whole life that I was doing that, especially when I was trying to lose weight. And so when I became aware of this and I started paying attention, I noticed a pattern. So I noticed, oh, when this happens, I go into this tailspin. When I get hit emotionally with a very specific feeling, I noticed because I would map them out. It was usually grief. When I
Oh,
would feel
wow.
grief about something like a person, a project, an item, it didn't matter, right? I would have a tendency to cope with that uncomfortable feeling with food.
Mm.
Right. And so I became aware that I started mapping it out. I noticed a pattern and I said, this is interesting. Right. So it's like Alice in Wonderland in my own mind on this mission. I was on this mission. And when I realized that that is a pattern, and if I know the pattern, if I can recognize it, I can interrupt that pattern. And whether can I interrupt it at the very beginning, at the trigger point? Probably not, because a lot of those things I didn't have control over what would happen in life, but I did have control over how I responded and reacted to it. And so I knew somehow intuitively that I couldn't stop myself, right? At the beginning. And so I needed a bridge. And
Okay.
I thought about it. I thought about it. I was like, okay, what if you create the main things that you reach for are Nutella, ice cream, things like that. So, what if you create substitutions for these products, for these items, for these foods that you're going for? And have them handy, have them ready when you need to go into triage.
Okay.
And
Mhm.
so I would be prepared. I would expect it to happen. I didn't, because when I try to be like, oh, I'm never going to do that again, that didn't work. Wasn't realistic. It happened. And
Yeah.
so anytime it would happen, I had something prepared and I would reach for that instead.
Yeah, I do believe in a good strategy is so much more powerful than willpower, right? Which tends to lead to failure or frustration. So
Mhm.
it sounds like your storytelling about what was going on had to become more honest. Would that sound correct for
I had to
you?
become aware, right? So I
Oh,
had to become aware of the self sabotaging behaviors, thoughts, and patterns in a real honest way, right? With no
yeah,
judgment, without getting
right.
into blame and shame and all that stuff. Because
Yeah.
getting into blame and shame and judgment is self
Mm.
sabotage. That is the protector of self sabotage, right? Because as
Yeah, right,
soon as you become aware of your self sabotaging behavior, the defender and protector of those behaviors jump out, which are guilt, shame, embarrassment, judgment. They come out and defend that behavior because the behavior wants to stay there, right? And so
right,
when you fall victim to the bodyguard of self sabotage, you're going to repeat that cycle. You're going to be right back to square one. And so I realized this and I said, okay, I'm going to make shame, guilt, judgment my friends. Because then if I'm friends with all of you guys, I can get to the self sabotage in a
wow.
friendly way. I want to be on the inside. I don't want to be fighting myself from the outside. And so that was where my breakthrough really happened is I would say,
Oh,
okay, shame, guilt, embarrassment, judgment, let's talk. Let's have a chat.
yeah, it's great. I can hear curiosity came in and a desire to get to know yourself at a deeper level, all these parts that were contributing to where you found yourself at that point. And so often with clients that I work with, I find that they definitely, in the attempt to shift their behavior, can become very critical, very judgmental, very, to use your words, shaming about what they're doing. And so, how did you navigate that in a way that made it possible to be friendly with these parts of you as opposed to punitive?
Understanding,
Mm,
really listening to why, right? Why? Where is this feeling coming from? And if you
okay.
trace the thread far enough, if you listen long enough, if you allow yourself to feel it long enough, and I'm
Mm,
not saying it happens in one shot, right? It happens over
right,
years and years and years, but just
right.
follow that thread and you will find an innocent little girl who was hurt a long
Mm,
time ago and she
yeah.
doesn't really want that again, or a little toddler that lost a parent, or
Mm,
adolescent girl who had her whole life change, a teenager that rebelled because their parents were so strict and she couldn't move and she felt paralyzed by them, and a
mhm,
college
mhm,
student who worked really hard to make things. And all of these times and all of these personas and identities still live inside of us. They don't
right.
go anywhere. The more critical and shaming we are towards ourselves in those periods of time and those personas as they were crystallized in our mind,
Mm,
the more they
mhm,
dislike us. So if you think about it from their perspective, put yourself back into your teenage self and you
mm,
see yourself now treating yourself in this way. Of course, you're not going to get on the team. You're not going to be on the same team. You're going to be in
yeah,
constant resistance, right? And
yeah.
so I didn't want that. I wanted it to be frictionless, smooth, as easy as
Mm,
possible because it wasn't going to be easy. But I didn't want to create problems where problems didn't need to exist. And so I had to put my
okay.
ego down and really
Wow.
hear all the feedback.
I can hear such great strength, growth, and healing in that share. So thank you for that because I do feel that women tend to struggle with how to be gentle with themselves. And I think if you're able to if you are a mother, you can certainly connect with these young versions of ourselves, as you say, that still exist inside us and so desperately want our attention and connection and probably even reassurance that we're not going to neglect them at this time when we're working to connect with them. So thank you for sharing that. So you use the phrase detoxing your daily life. So I love that because I think midlife requires editing. And you said some things you have to take away. What did you eliminate?
So many things.
Was it food, relationships, media, internal narratives, all of those, something else?
That's a great question because I did not eliminate any foods. I still
Okay,
wanted to have all the things I liked,
great.
just in a different format, right? So it wasn't going to be store bought ice cream. It was ice cream that I made. It wasn't going to be store bought brownies. It was going to be brownies, protein brownies that I made, right? And
Okay.
so I left those things in just on my terms. With people, you can't do that. So you can't edit parts that you like and others that you don't, right? So with people, I had to really put my foot down, especially
Are you
with the type
talking
of
about boundaries?
Yes,
Mm,
yes,
mm.
exactly. Especially if you're the type of person that does not have good boundaries, which another funny story. This week or last week, I think, I was recording an episode for my podcast, the How Good Can It Get podcast. And I was talking to Dr. Amelia Kelly, who's an ADHD therapist. And
Okay.
literally, as she's describing all of these characteristics and traits and personality types of ADHD women in perimenopause, I had to stop her right in the middle. I was like, wait a minute, hold on. Check. Every single one of them I have, right? And so
Right.
I cracked myself up because I was like, I had no idea that having not such great boundaries, letting
Mm,
people to do whatever they want in your life, a whole bunch of things are part of ADHD and perimenopause, which amplifies in that time as well. And so that learning that was really mind blowing. But boundaries are a lot of us struggle with boundaries, right? We allow people
yeah.
into our lives and put up with things that we don't really feel like we need to put up with because we are conditioned or afraid to be alone or we don't want to disappoint people. And all our friends from the last question. And so I had to really own up to that. I had to
Okay.
let people go.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes when we grow, shift, or become a new version of ourselves, that is a part of that shift. Good for you for recognizing that because it does sound like some boundaries had to become non-negotiable to,
Unnegotiable.
yeah, good for you. So you were running a business and raising a family, as I understand it. So when women say, I don't have time, how do you respond to that?
I know you don't have time.
Yeah, okay. So you can relate to that comment because you were there. Yeah.
100%. How can she have time?
Now,
Think
is it
about
truly time or is it priority though? Do you think?
it depends on how old the kids are, right? Depends on if she has a supportive partner. Depends
Right.
on a lot of things, how much time she has. But the question is, what is the cost of you not having time? Are you willing to pay that
Oh,
price? Right? Because
powerful.
I paid the price of prediabetes, 2 ER hospitalizations, all kinds of things. I had 19 ovarian cysts. I was 80 pounds obese. That was the
Mm,
price I paid.
wow.
So,
Wow.
how much are you going to pay now,
Mm,
or are you going to
mm.
pay later? Because you're going to pay it. There's going to be an invoice, there's going to be a bill,
Yeah,
right?
there's
No matter
always a
what.
bill. There's always a bill. So let's talk about this program or this retreat organization that you founded called Thor. The House of Rose is what it stands for. So tell our listeners what that's about and how that's helping not only you, but the people that you get to work with in their midlife transition.
Yeah, so the House of Rose is my love child. So in the process of this transformation, of this transition, it's been 13 years for me now. I'm going to be 50 this year. I started at 37. All of this is encapsulated into the work that I'm doing now. And the retreats are 5-day retreats. They're in the Smoky Mountains. They're all
Oh,
for
beautiful.
women. And they incorporate yoga, Pilates, hiking, food, strength training, community, connection, talking to people that are in the same stages you're in, workshops on beauty and all kinds of things, right? And so these are all the things I absolutely love and adore and love to share. And that's what the retreats are for. And at the same time, I also offer coaching for women that want to continue working through
Mm.
this particular transformation or transition or lifestyle change. And it really is my love child. And I feel like it has become my absolute most beloved stage of life.
I could just tell by you're just lighting up talking about it. So that's wonderful. So as a closing reflection for the women listening who know she's capable of more, but hasn't acted yet, what would you say to her?
Hang in there. Your time will come. If it's not today, if it's not tomorrow, just
Mhm.
don't stop. Don't stop knowing and feeling and listening to your intuition. A lot of times, our
Mm.
intuition is a compass. It's really nudging us in a better direction and asking the right questions. It's not necessarily always self sabotage either. Sometimes the saboteurs, they do have good intentions. And don't wait until you're at rock bottom.
Okay.
And I know
So a
that's
lot of
really
times that's what women are waiting for, maybe.
absolutely.
Things get too bad, and then hopefully it's not too late. That's great that you are setting that bar at maybe waiting if the timing isn't right, but certainly listening and not waiting till it's too late, which is wonderful. So I want to thank you, Terry, for joining us. This conversation reinforces something I deeply believe. Midlife isn't about shrinking, it's about strengthening. If this episode resonated with you, please share this with a woman who's ready to raise her standards, not lower her expectations. Terry, where can our listeners find you and learn more about Thor?
You can find me on the website, thehouseofrose.com, or on my Instagram, How Good Can It Get?
Oh, that's wonderful. Great. And you mentioned you have a podcast. How good can it get? Yes?
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Wonderful. We look forward to listening to more of that and for our listeners to check out more of you. Okay, you've been listening to She Asked, where healing meets practical hope. I'm your host, Anna McBride, and I am so glad that you were here today. And until soon, be well.